My husband's idealized former love, who was pregnant, claimed her allergy was caused by our son being unsanitary and infecting her with germs. He then threw Leo into the UV treatment chamber and subjected him to UV light treatment for 3 days and nights. When I found out, I knelt outside the mansion, desperately pleading/begging him to spare Leo. Leo is still so young. Being exposed for that long will kill him. Please, please let him out quickly. I'll take him back to the family estate immediately and never bother you again. But I was answered by Sarah's moans and David's impatient roar, stop playing the victim. That UV treatment chamber will only boost Leo's immunity and make him healthier. Sarah is a doctor, would she harm Leo? Now get lost. When I frantically rushed into the UV treatment chamber, all I saw was Leo, his body covered in sores and corroded, with no healthy skin left. His small body was already cold. I held Leo, breaking down into tears, while the TV in the hallway suddenly turned on, broadcasting David using tens of thousands of drones to write a passionate declaration of love for Sarah across the night sky. Sarah said it's about time. Go pick up Leo and bring him home. He's going to be a big brother soon, and making a small sacrifice for his sister is only right. Leo, he's already dead. I held Leo's tiny, lifeless body tightly, but I could never warm him up again, never hear him sweetly call me mommy again. The drones outside lit up the entire night sky, forming the words, I love you forever. Overwhelmed by grief, I violently coughed up a mouthful of blood and fainted. When I woke up, I was lying on a bed in a hospital room, listening to 2 young nurses whispering nearby. The UV lights caused that child's retinas to detach, blinding him, and then his body became covered in sores, and he died from excessive blood loss. But he was only 5 years old. I don't know what terrible crime that child committed to be locked in that UV treatment chamber and tortured to death. It's truly heartbreaking. My fingernails dug fiercely into my palms, drawing blood that stained the bedsheet, yet it was less than 1,000th of the pain in my heart. My Leo, how desperate and scared he must have been when he realized he couldn't see. How much pain he must have endured as his body decayed inch by inch. Did he cry and scream for mommy to save him countless times? My tears had dried up. I struggled to get up to see Leo off on his final journey, but I ran into Mrs. Smith, who had just arrived. The old woman's clouded eyes were filled with tears, and the hand gripping her cane trembled uncontrollably. I never imagined David could do something so utterly depraved. We, the Smith family, have wronged you. I'll make him come here right now to atone for his sins. Several calls were hung up. It wasn't until the 8th time that David's impatient voice came through the receiver. Emily, are you done yet? So what if Leo was in the UV treatment chamber for a few days? Did you need to go complain to my mother about it? Sarah said a little UV light is good for killing germs and boosting a child's immunity. Can you stop making a big deal out of nothing? I can't believe you're so malicious. You'd lie about your son dying just to get me to come see you? It's disgusting. I'm overseas with Sarah for her prenatal checkup. I don't have time for your drama. Go reflect on yourself. He hung up the phone without hesitation. Mrs. Smith was so angry that she could barely stand. Leaning on her cane, she wanted to go overseas herself to bring David back to apologize to me. I held her back, Leo's pale little face constantly appearing in my mind. It doesn't matter anymore. All Leo wanted was a little bit of time with his dad. He had looked forward to his birthday party for so long. His dad had promised to come, but he never showed up, even by the next morning. If he hadn't craved that little bit of time, Leo wouldn't have snuck off to his dad's office to find him, wouldn't have met Sarah, and wouldn't have been thrown into the UV treatment chamber to die a horrible death. I should have seen it long ago. David's heart belonged to Sarah from beginning to end. On the night of the birthday party he missed, he was at the office, spending the entire night with Sarah. What use would his atonement be to me now? Leo would never come back. Seeing my state, Mrs. Smith slammed her cane heavily on the ground, took my hand, and choked out, even the cruelest creature doesn't harm its young. I can't believe our Smith family raised such a heartless beast, a monster who wouldn't spare his son for that woman. You've done so much for David, for the Smith family. We can never repay you in this lifetime. But I just looked at her calmly, my face expressionless. My heart was numb with pain, there would be no more ripples. After a long pause, I spoke slowly, my voice so broken it was barely coherent. Grandmother, let me go. Mrs. Smith gently hugged me, remained silent for a long time, then spoke softly. Good child, you should go. This is what our entire Smith family owes you. David ruined his good fortune. He brought it upon himself. After leaving the hospital, I returned home, holding Leo's urn. For 5 consecutive days, I held a memorial service for Leo at home, praying for him. Mommy is sorry, my child. In your next life, be a free-flying bird in the sky, never bound by anything again. Until the 7th day, I heard the front door open, and David's angry voice called out, "Where's Leo? What's with this memorial photo? Are you addicted to acting? This is bad luck." Sarah pretended to be scared, shrinking into his arms, but her hands secretly hooked his tie. "Dave, but I feel like this is so exciting, like we're being watched. I want to." David's eyes instantly filled with desire. He picked her up and pressed her onto the couch. "Watch." Them kiss intimately right in front of Leo's memorial photo, oblivious to everything else. David's hand was already reaching for Sarah's bra clasp. I couldn't suppress my rage any longer. I rushed forward, pulled Sarah away, and slapped her hard across the face. She gasped, covering her face, and tears instantly welled up in her eyes as she looked at David. The next second, David kicked me away, sending me flying into a cabinet. Leo's photo fell and shattered on the floor. Ignoring the pain, I scrambled to pick up the photo. Looking at Leo's bright, smiling face in the picture, I wiped away the dust and hugged it tightly to my chest. Seeing me like this, David froze for a moment, then his anger flared even hotter. "Emily, there's a limit to your acting. I'm back now. Who are you putting on this show with memorial photos for? Where's Leo? Tell him to come out and apologize to Sarah. Let me see how well he's reflected on himself." My face was ashen. I looked towards Leo's urn in the room, my voice ice cold. "Believe it or not, I'm not acting. Leo is gone." David followed my gaze to the urn in the room and froze for a moment. He was about to speak when Sarah, sobbing beside him, interrupted. "Emily, I know you hate me, but you can't deliberately send Leo to Grandmother Smith's house to keep him from seeing David. That will cause psychological problems for the child. Even if Emily is busy with work, she shouldn't neglect her son. The last time he came to the office, he was filthy. I was the one who helped him bathe and change clothes, and I even got sick because of it." David's face instantly turned cold, and his gaze towards me was full of disgust. "That's right, Emily. A malicious woman like you doesn't deserve to be Leo's mother. Not only do you neglect him, but now you deliberately curse him dead just to get my attention? You're not even half as good as Sarah. Go to the family estate later and bring Leo back. Make him acknowledge Sarah as his new mother. A mother with your character will only ruin a child." An intense pain spread through my chest. I looked at David in disbelief. It tore me apart. "Have you forgotten that every success the Smith family has today is because of the deals I painstakingly negotiated? You promised you'd come to Leo's birthday, which is why I felt comfortable going out of town for a business deal. But you killed your son for that woman. You want to find Leo? Fine. Go find him in hell." Tears streamed down my face uncontrollably. The man who used to drive all night to a neighboring town just to buy me sweets when I had pregnancy cravings, I couldn't reconcile that person with the face before me now. When my parents died unexpectedly, it was David who stayed by my side and helped me through the darkness. Later, when the Smith family was on the verge of bankruptcy, I didn't hesitate to merge my company under his name. To make the Smith family thrive, I worked day and night, drank until I had a stomach hemorrhage negotiating deals, and was even retaliated against by a rival company and thrown into a lake in the middle of winter. Although I was saved, I suffered permanent damage that made it extremely difficult to have children. Leo was my light, my only child in this lifetime. I remember when we first found out I was pregnant, David, who was always so composed and proud, actually cried. He was so heartbroken, he wished he could bear the pain of pregnancy for me. His eyes red, he pulled me into his arms. "Emily, I swear I will never fail you in this life." That happiness was as brilliant as fireworks, but it only lasted until he ran into Sarah when he took Leo for a checkup. He started blaming me for being too busy with work and neglecting him and Leo, saying I wasn't as gentle and considerate as Sarah, who understood his needs. Gradually, he came home less and less. At first, he used work as an excuse, but later, he didn't even bother to pretend. I was heartbroken then. I was also lost in the warmth of the past, thinking that if I just managed our little family well, he would eventually come back. But I never expected that my hesitation would cost Leo his life. The man who once looked at me with eyes full of tenderness now regarded me with utter disgust. "Emily, I didn't realize you were even more shameless than I thought. Do you think you're the Smith family's savior? Let me tell you, now you're just a dog depending on the Smith family. You're just afraid that if Leo is given to Sarah, it will affect your position as Mrs. Smith, so you deliberately hid him. Don't think I can't see through you. With that, he didn't spare me another glance, but wrapped his arm around Sarah and walked out. My heart was dead. I knew any further explanation would be futile. But the next second, Sarah suddenly clutched her stomach and winced, looking at the cartoon-decorated urn in the room. She grabbed David's arm and said, "Dave, I found what's making me allergic. It's the dirty stuff from that box." David was instantly heartbroken. He quickly helped her to the couch and sat her down, then roared at me, "You, who were thrown into a lake because of your recklessness and became unable to have children, are jealous that Sarah is pregnant with my child and deliberately put something dirty there to harm her? How despicable can you be? If anything happens to Sarah's child, I'll make you pay with your life." He then gently rubbed Sarah's belly, comforting her. "Sarah, don't be afraid. I'll call the bodyguards to come in and dump it down the drain." I was utterly shocked, unable to believe he wouldn't even let Leo rest in peace after death. "David, that's Leo's ashes. How could you?" But he didn't even spare me a glance until the bodyguards walked straight into the room. I rushed in like a madwoman, clutching the urn to my chest, my voice filled with despair. "These are your own son's ashes. You know how difficult it was for me to give birth to Leo. How could I possibly use his life to put on a show for you? Are you going to dispose of Leo's ashes? In this small box is the only proof that Leo ever existed. How could I let them desecrate it like this, leaving my Leo without even peace in death?" David saw my despair as I held the box and hesitated for a moment. But Sarah immediately burst into tears and knelt before me. "Emily, if you don't like me, I'll just leave. But how could you be so cruel as to harm the baby in my belly? That's David's flesh and blood, too. I know you think I don't deserve to be Leo's mother, but you can't just lie like that. I'm a doctor myself. Leo was only in the UV treatment chamber for a few days for disinfection. How could he possibly die? Please, please spare me and the baby in my belly. I just want to be by David's side. I never wanted to compete with you for anything from the start." David's eyes instantly turned sharp and cruel. "Emily, I really should give you an Oscar award." Every day Leo was in the chamber, Sarah asked a doctor to look after him. Nothing could have happened. Do you think I'm an idiot? Sarah's pregnancy is already hard enough, and she has to worry about Leo, too. Meanwhile, you, this mother, are willing to curse your son to death for your gain and even try to harm Sarah. You wicked woman! He called the bodyguards and had them break my fingers one by one, then snatched the urn from my arms. Piercing pain shot through my 10 fingers, yet it was less than 1,000th of the sorrow in my heart. "No. Please, please let Leo go. I'll leave, I'll do whatever you say, I don't want anything. Just please, please leave him alone." How I wanted to rush forward and snatch my Leo back, but the pain in my fingers left me powerless. I could only crawl forward on my knees like a dog. But David kicked me away, and a bodyguard grabbed my wrist tightly, preventing me from moving. I watched helplessly as he covered his nose and dumped Leo's ashes down the drain. Then, as if that wasn't enough, he slammed the cartoon-decorated urn onto the floor and stomped on it repeatedly. As the urn shattered into pieces, my heart shattered along with it. I coughed up a mouthful of blood and nearly fainted. Sarah shot me a triumphant look, then snuggled into David's arms, sobbing softly, "Dave, even though that dirty stuff is gone, what if Emily tries to harm me again later?" David patted her back protectively, looked at me thoughtfully for a moment, and said, "Guards, lock my wife in the snake pit to reflect. Only enough suffering will teach her a lesson and make her give up the idea of harming Sarah." I looked at David numbly, allowing the bodyguards to throw me into the snake pit. My body was coiled by cold snake tails, and a tearing pain instantly spread throughout my limbs, making me scream in agony. I couldn't help but think of my Leo. Was he in this much pain before he died? He was so small, how could he bear it? Blood mixed with tears streamed down my face. I saw a flicker of reluctance in David's eyes, but the next second Sarah bent over and clutched her stomach, and he picked her up and left without looking back. Before leaving, he instructed the servants, "Tomorrow, have my wife personally bring Leo to the office to acknowledge Sarah as his mother. Otherwise, being thrown into the snake pit will be the least of her worries." It wasn't until late at night that Mrs. Smith rescued me. After being bandaged, I ignored my weak, unsteady body. Clutching Leo's toys, I left the Smith family estate immediately. Mrs. Smith, her eyes filled with tears, arranged for people to escort me away that very night and helped me get new identification. The next day, David, who was at the office applying stretch mark oil for Sarah, waited and waited for me, but instead received a frantic report from his assistant. "Mr. Smith, it's bad. Your wife is missing." David froze for a moment. Then frowned and said, "Impossible. Leo is still at the family estate. How dare she leave?" The assistant didn't dare look at him, lowering his head and mumbling, "Mr. Smith, your son is dead." David's hand froze. Then his face showed impatience, and he said in a deep voice, "What? You're playing along with her act, too? I guess Emily hasn't suffered enough if she still has the energy to bribe people for this performance." The assistant dared not argue and stood rooted to the spot. But the next second, Mrs. Smith was pushed in a wheelchair, and the cane in her hand swung down towards David. "How could my Smith family produce such a heartless monster like you? For that vixen, you even killed your son." David shielded Sarah in his arms. He couldn't dodge in time and was hit hard, looking at Mrs. Smith with utter dissatisfaction. "Mother, why are you playing along with Emily's nonsense? She doesn't want to give Leo to Sarah, so she bribed you and the assistant for this clumsy act, right? What excuse did she use to trick you this time? Mother, you're old now, don't get involved in her foolishness. Don't think I don't know she's hiding Leo at your place." The old woman's eyes were bloodshot. She was so angry she could barely breathe, suddenly looking 10 years older. After taking the medicine the assistant handed her, she roared at David, "For this woman, who knows whose bastard child she's carrying, you killed your son and even dumped his ashes down the drain? You're not human. Do you even know that after I rescued Emily, she left the Smith family estate that very night, even though she was so weak she could barely stand? You drove her away." Sarah sensed something was wrong. She immediately put on a pitiful act and knelt before Mrs. Smith, sobbing, "Grandmother, I know my family background might not be as good as Emily's, but David and I truly love each other. The baby in my belly is his flesh and blood, your granddaughter. Blame me if you moo. Just don't hurt David. It's because I love him too much that I made Emily dislike me. But I never wanted to compete with Emily for anything from the start. I just wanted to be by David's side, even without a title." She stubbornly looked up at Mrs. Smith, not letting her tears fall, a picture of innocent vulnerability, which made David's heart ache for her. His heart aching, he put his arm around Sarah's shoulders and knelt on the ground as well, saying to Mrs. Smith, "Mother, I don't know why you, like Emily, can't tolerate Sarah. But Sarah isn't as strong as Emily, she's all alone and has no one, and she's carrying my child. Why won't you just let us be together?" That day, Leo ran to the office, and he was filthy. Sarah personally helped him change clothes and bathed him, and she even got a severe allergic reaction because of it. Sending Leo to the UV treatment chamber was for his good. Otherwise, if he was carrying viruses, he'd get sick sooner or later. Sarah is a doctor. She even specifically asked a doctor she knew to look after Leo. How could anything have happened to Leo? "Mother, stop joining Emily in bullying Sarah. She's a good mother who truly cares for Leo." Hearing David defend her like that, Sarah cried even more heartbrokenly, trying to collapse onto Mrs. Smith's lap. This was her perfect chance to get into the Smith family estate. As long as she got Mrs. Smith's approval, she could legitimately push Emily out and become the mistress of the Smith family estate. But Mrs. Smith simply slapped her hand away with her cane, then, enraged, slapped Sarah across the face and said to David, "You're worse than an animal. When has Leo been sick in his 5 years? Didn't he run to find you because you promised to spend his birthday with him and then stand him up? He didn't even finish kindergarten. He got lost and fell so many times trying to find the office, and you just listened to this vixen and threw him into the UV treatment chamber to his death. ADH without a second thought? It's an abomination. You keep saying Em is strong, and Sarah is weak and helpless. But if it weren't for Em, you'd probably be out on the streets begging right now. Have you forgotten who desperately pulled the Smith family back from the brink of bankruptcy? Who worked day and night for the Smith family without complaint? Was it Sarah? It's useless to say more now. Em is gone, and our company is going to go bankrupt too. If it weren't for Em, there would be no Smith family today. How could you be here flaunting your vixens? How much has she done for the Smith family and you over the years? Are you pretending not to see it? You enjoy the life she gave you while also hurting her? You're worse than a pig or a dog. Mrs. Smith's voice trembled with rage. She always straightened instantly, and she looked incredibly aged. She had seen and remembered all my sacrifices over the years. For so many years, she had already treated me like her own granddaughter, constantly reminding David that he must never let me down. She had thought David and I would be happy forever, but in the end, David drove me away. The Smith family deserved this, they weren't worthy of such good fortune. Finally, she sighed heavily, looking at David with eyes full of disappointment and resolve. The Smith family owes Em a debt that we can never repay in this lifetime. If I could do it over, I'd rather the Smith family had gone bankrupt back then and lived out on the streets than let him marry a heartless beast like you and suffer. You don't deserve to be a Smith. Don't call me mother again from now on. I find it repulsive. Watching grandmother's tears streaming down her face, her wrinkled face etched with guilt and sorrow, David finally started to panic, feeling as if something very important was being ripped from his chest. Mother, is what you're saying true? Mrs. Smith waved her hand wearily. A bodyguard nearby handed her a tablet. On it was the surveillance video from outside the UV treatment chamber. The screen was filled with blinding purple light, and Leo's agonizing screams echoed throughout the stairwell. Mommy, Leo hurts so bad. Leo knows he was wrong. Leo won't sneak out to find Daddy anymore. Mommy, Leo's eyes hurt so bad. I can't see anything. My body hurts too. Is Leo going to die soon? Daddy, Leo doesn't want you to play with him anymore. Leo will be good. Please, please let Leo out. Leo struggled to crawl towards the door. Blood stained the floor. He desperately banged on the door, but there was no response. Gradually, Leo's voice weakened until it was gone. In that final moment, his little hand remained open, as if waiting for his daddy to pick him up. Listening to Leo's heart-wrenching screams, Mrs. Smith's heart ached, and she trembled uncontrollably. My sweet grandson, he was so small. David watched the surveillance video in disbelief. His head swam, and he couldn't believe this was real. How is this possible? I thought it was just like locking him in a dark room for a few days, that nothing would happen. How could this happen? I didn't know. I thought Emily was jealous that Sarah was pregnant with my child and deliberately set this up to trick me. I never expected Leo to be gone. I didn't mean to. Intense guilt threatened to drown him. He felt a panic he had never experienced before, staring blankly at the photo of Leo before cremation that the assistant handed him. The tiny figure lay motionless on the cold bed. The blood had dried, flowing down from the corner of his eye. All his exposed skin was covered in sores. There wasn't a single patch of healthy flesh on his body. The sight of his death was horrific. He couldn't bear to look any longer. His heart ached so much he could barely breathe, and his face was as pale as paper. How could this be? Sarah asked her colleague to look after Leo properly. Just a few days ago, she said Leo had been picked up and was running around happily. How is this possible? I never intended to kill my son. There must be some misunderstanding. Sarah, seeing things weren't going her way, quickly threw herself into David's arms, crying heartbrokenly to comfort him. Yes, Dave, there must be a misunderstanding. I specifically asked my colleague to take good care of Leo. Emily must have deliberately killed her child out of jealousy and rivalry. Don't blame yourself. Leo just had bad luck with such a malicious mother like Emily. Don't worry, I'll give you a child 100 times cuter and more obedient than Leo. We'll be very happy. But David, who had always doted on her, pushed her away abruptly, his voice icy cold. Who permitted you to talk about Em like that? She cherished Leo more than her own life. How could she possibly harm him? Seeing that Sarah was still pretending, Mrs. Smith, furious, immediately told her assistant to throw out a stack of documents. They were Sarah's chat logs with a male colleague. There were hundreds of densely packed records, every single one explicit and suggestive. Until just a few days ago, that woman's son is locked up. Turn the UV light intensity up to maximum for me. Once he's dead, our baby in my belly will be the only heir to the Smith family. We'll have everything we want then. David's hand holding the documents began to tremble. His face grew uglier and uglier, and rage boiled in his eyes. When he looked up at Sarah, she stood up in panic and ran for the door, but was blocked by a bodyguard. Seeing that her scheme was exposed, Sarah knelt, crying, and begged David, Dave, listen to me, it's not true. I never did such a thing. I just loved you too much. I was afraid you'd leave me if you found out the baby in my belly isn't yours, and I was afraid your heart only belonged to Emily and her child. I was blinded by obsession and made a mistake. She was in a panic, babbling excuses, hoping David would be soft-hearted and let her go as usual. But David, having learned the truth, felt only endless hatred in his heart. He grabbed Sarah by the collar and slammed her onto the floor. Her belly hit the corner of the table, and immediately a pool of blood spread beneath her. She clutched her stomach in pain and curled up. "Dave, you can't do this to me. You said you'd love me forever." But David didn't spare her another glance, just like that night at the mansion with me. He strode out of the office, instructing the bodyguards without looking back, send her to the UV treatment chamber, too. Pull her out when she's close to death, treat her, and then throw her back in. I'll make her repay 100-fold the suffering she caused Leo and Em. The bodyguards behind him obeyed, grabbing Sarah by the hair and dragging her out, face down. Agonizing screams immediately filled the room. "Dave, I know I was wrong. Please, please let me go." But the departing David could no longer be swayed. It wasn't until he rushed home like a madman and pushed open the door that David finally believed that Emily, who had loved him so deeply, had truly been driven away by him. The entire house felt cold and empty, as if no one had ever lived there. In the past, whenever he came home, Emily, no matter how busy, would have a hot meal ready for him, and Leo would sweetly run into his arms, calling him daddy. But now, everything was gone. What had he done? He had never thought Emily would leave him. He hadn't even truly planned for Sarah to become his wife. He just wanted to make Emily angry. He blamed her for being increasingly busy with work, missing Leo's parent-teacher conferences, and forgetting their anniversaries. But he seemed to have forgotten that they fell in love at their lowest point, and it was Emily who sacrificed herself to save the Smith family, and to save him. He had never intended to kill Leo either. Sarah said the viruses Leo might be carrying could make him sick, and going into the UV treatment chamber would disinfect him and boost his immunity. He thought this would be good for Leo and that Emily would surely come back to him once she found out Leo was confined. How much he wished Emily would put aside her work and spend more time with him. But his body couldn't stand any longer. He collapsed heavily onto the floor. His eyes desperately searched the room, trying to find something related to Emily, but there was nothing. It wasn't until he saw the engagement ring in an inconspicuous corner that he finally broke down completely, his eyes wet with tears. At this moment, he finally believed that Emily was truly gone from his life. The ring was old and slightly faded, but it was well maintained, without a speck of dust. This was the diamond ring he had given Emily when he proposed to her that year. At that time, the Smith family was on the verge of bankruptcy. Everyone advised Emily not to get involved. Her own company was thriving, and she didn't need to deal with the Smith family's mess. But she selflessly merged her company with his, pouring all her energy into helping the Smith family rise again. He couldn't afford a fancy ring to propose to Emily, but Emily didn't mind at all. She held the ring and cried tears of joy. Later, even when she was set up by a rival company and pushed into a lake in the dead of winter, she held onto this ring tightly in her hand, even when she was near unconscious. She never took it off for a single day. She suffered lasting health problems then, and carrying Leo later was incredibly difficult. But even so, she never rested for a single day. Instead, she smiled and told me not to worry. Emily had loved him so much, but what had he done? He had personally caused Leo's tragic death and even sided with an outsider to dump his ashes down the drain. Emily cherished Leo so much. How much pain she must have felt at that moment. David couldn't help but slap himself hard several times. His heart was filled with towering regret. He was wrong, irredeemably wrong. All along, he had brought Sarah in just to make Emily angry, wanting Emily not to work so hard and to spend more time with him and Leo. But now, he had personally driven Emily away. No. Emily had just suffered the pain of losing a child, and then he threw her into the snake pit to be tortured. She must be extremely weak now. He had to find her. This time, he wouldn't mess things up again. Thinking this, he scrambled to his feet, stumbling as he rushed out of the house towards the family estate. The cold night was biting. He knelt in the pouring rain, unable to tell if the wetness on his face was rain or tears. "Mother, I know I was wrong. Please, please tell me where Em is, okay?" But the front gate before him remained tightly shut, locking him out. He refused to give up, remaining on his knees, pleading desperately on the ground, just begging Mrs. Smith to tell him Emily's whereabouts. Blood mixed with rain, dripping down his forehead, but he didn't notice. Only one voice repeated in his mind. He couldn't lose Emily. It wasn't until the pain numbed him and he was on the verge of fainting that the front gate finally opened slowly. The butler, holding an umbrella, pushed Mrs. Smith out. Mrs. Smith, who had always doted on David, now looked at him with icy disgust. "I told you, the Smith family has no place for a heartless beast like you. You don't need to kneel here begging me. Do you think Em will come back just because of this? Don't forget, when she begged you to let Leo out, she also knelt here, pleading desperately. Did you show even a shred of compassion then?" David was soaked through. As his consciousness blurred, he saw his mother come out, and a flicker of hope rose in his heart, but his mother's words chilled him again. He crawled forward on his knees, collapsing at Mrs. Smith's feet, begging again, "Mother, I truly know I was wrong. I'll give up everything to get Em back. Please give me one more chance to atone. Tell me where she is, okay?" Looking at her once aloof and distinguished grandson, now crying uncontrollably like a child, Mrs. Smith sighed heavily. "It's too late. Em is gone. Even if you find her, she'll never forgive you. Besides, what do you have left without Em? All these years, you comfortably enjoyed Em's sacrifices. When did you ever care about the company? You haven't even met the business partners, have you? Now, a large number of business partners are sending cancellation notices. Do you think they were truly interested in the Smith family? If Em hadn't been struggling to support us from behind the scenes, there would be no Smith family today. You brought all this upon yourself. Our Smith family didn't appreciate the good fortune we had. It's done. I'm old now. Go. Our ties are severed. You're on your own." David stared blankly at the front gate slamming shut with a bang, his heart overwhelmed by regret. "No! I'll find Em, no matter where she is." By then, I had arrived overseas on a beautiful small island, bringing Leo's favorite toys with me. The weather here was pleasant. Every day, I could open the window and see seagulls circling freely outside, feeling the warm sea breeze on my face. I placed Leo's favorite toys right by the window. I thought he would like it here, too. I opened a bookstore by the seaside. Watching the travelers come and go every day, my life was peaceful and comfortable. Former business partners contacted me, offering to invest in me to open a new company, but I refused them all. In the past, I worked desperately for the Smith family, but in the end, I couldn't even save my son. I hated socializing and entertaining clients, but David was used to a life of privilege and would never humble himself to deal with those difficult business partners. For that fleeting warmth from the past, I tricked myself into walking towards the abyss, and I also killed Leo. I look at Leo's toys. My Leo suffered too much. For the rest of my life, I just wanted to stay with him. I thought my life would continue like this, in peace. Until that day, when I opened the door and saw David outside. He was so thin I could barely recognize him. He just stood there quietly, his eyes filled with profound sorrow. The moment he saw me, a light flared in his eyes. "Em, I finally found you. I'm sorry, I know I was wrong. But I truly never intended to kill Leo. It was all Sarah. Don't worry, I've locked her in the UV treatment chamber. I've avenged our Leo. Em, will you please forgive me one more time?" He stepped forward, trying to embrace me, but I sharply backed away, feeling only revulsion. "If you lock Sarah up, will my Leo come back? The one who killed Leo was never Sarah, it was you, David. You sent people to lock him up. You killed your son with your own hands." He quickly waved his hands, his face full of panic. "No, that's not true. I just wanted to make you angry. I didn't want you to always be busy with work and neglect me and Leo. And before I locked Leo up, I double-checked with the doctor that he would be fine. I never expected that the doctor had already been bribed by Sarah. I never thought Sarah could be this evil. Please, give me another chance. I'll spend the rest of my life making it up to you, atoning for my sins." I almost laughed from anger. I reached out and slapped him hard. "Make it up to me? When I loved you, all you gave me was endless pain and betrayal. Now I just want a peaceful life, and you come asking to make amends? Can you stop being so self-pitying? No amount of amends can bring back my Leo. Now, all I wish is to never see you again for the rest of my life." With that, I turned and walked away, not bothering to look at him again. Late affection is worthless. I would never stay with him again. Later, I heard that the Smith Corporation went bankrupt. Mrs. Smith passed away from illness. Credit. Ors flooded the Smith family estate's doorstep, and David had a leg broken and disappeared without a trace. Only the vendors nearby knew that a lame beggar had suddenly appeared under the bridge. He could often be seen standing on the bridge, staring blankly in the direction of the bookstore, but he never came closer. I simply pretended not to see him, opening and closing the store as usual every day, feeling the sea breeze, watching people come and go, and enjoying my peaceful, warm life. Until one morning, when I opened the window, a small seagull suddenly flew in from outside. It flew affectionately onto my hand and lightly pecked me, then spread its wings and flew out the window, circling over the sea. My eyes instantly welled up. Was this Leo is coming to see Mommy? The past was gone, and it was time for me to move forward. The wind blew across the sea, creating ripples of light. This was truly the best time.